One of the organizers of the planned nationwide protest set to take off on Thursday has revealed some points of convergence and demands for the demonstrations. Now, 8 venues were actually disclosed in a letter addressed to the Inspector General of Police by the Ebun-Olu Adegboruwa, a senior advocate of Nigeria, soliciting for the Take It Back movement. Now, amongst the 8 locations includes the Eagle Square by the Secretariat, that's at the FCT in Abuja, and the Alausa Park by the Secretariat in Ikeja in Lagos State. While no single group claims to encapsulate the complete list, of the protest demands, a central theme is clear: economic hardship and calls for comprehensive reforms. Among the primary points is the rising cost of living, exacerbated by the President Bola Tinubu's removal of the fuel subsidy and the Naira's flotation. Now, joining me at this time to discuss this is the senior advocate of Nigeria, Femi Falana. Thank you for joining in, sir.
Thank you very much. My pleasure.
All right. Such a pivotal time in Nigeria, but we understand, yesterday on this issue, we spoke with the PRO, that's the PRO for the Nigerian Police Force, talking about ACP Muyiwa, and he disclosed that there have been consultations and meetings with the group you and Mr. Adegboruwa, represent. I would like to go into details, as regards an update of that meeting as regards tomorrow's protest before we get into specifics. Is there an update?
Well, personally, I am not a member of the Take Back movement. In other words, I am not one of the organizers of the protest. But I got invited to the meeting with the Inspector General of Police yesterday as a leader in the civil rights movement. And I made my position very clear. I reminded the Inspector General of Police and the audience of our experience with the management of public protests, and while the government concedes that it is the constitutional right of Nigerians to protest, I pointed out that under the law, the police have a duty to protect protesters. And that is an irreducible minimum standard. I was privileged to have led the legal battle that made, or that really recognized, that made the government to recognize the right of Nigerians, constitutional right of Nigerians to protest against policies of government considered inimical to their interests. And that battle was won in 2006, in 2000 at the Federal High Court. In 2008, the appeal filed by the Inspector General of Police was lost. That now led the National Assembly, in accordance with the terms of the judgment, to amend the law, to impose a duty on the police to provide adequate security during protests in Nigeria. That was made clear at the meeting, and the in designated areas. That's what happened at the meeting.
All right. So you said you are not part of the Take It Back group. So in what capacity?
No.
In what capacity, were you in the meeting, sir?
No, I was invited as a leader of the civil society, to also perhaps, lend my voice to how to ensure that protests are conducted peacefully, without any violence or killings, And I give my advice, and I reminded all that in the past, particularly in the much talk about 2020 protests, even the Kenyan protest, in the case of Kenya, and I'm in touch with the leaders of the bar in that country, the protest did not become violent until the police shot at protesters and killed some of them. And that was also what happened in Nigeria in 2020. For 2 weeks, young men in Lagos in Alausa and Lekki had peaceful protests before thugs descended on them. The same thugs now became wild and bomb places, including police stations, key policemen, but instead of having after a number of the thugs have been arrested, the army still went to Lekki and shot at unarmed protesters. And I'm saying this time around, even where the Lagos State government went to court yesterday to ask that protests be confined to 2 places, this is not the first time protests have been confined. In 2012, we had the protests in January 2012, the anti-fuel fight protest, the concentration. We designated on Jota.
And that, of course, will bring me, sir, to my next question as regards the legality of, or the constitutionality of that particular declaration, by, of course, the government. Now, we understand that the Lagos High Court has granted an ex parte application filed by the Lagos, State Attorney General, that's Lawal Pedro, seeking to restrict the proposed protest in Lagos to 2 spots. That's Freedom Park at Ojota and also Peace Park in Ketu. Something similar also happened in Ogun State, where the Ogun State High Court on Wednesday declared that, their protest be restricted to about 4 locations. And some have actually argued that since it's a peaceful protest, should there be restriction as to where it should occur? Is it constitutional?
Well, the law allows, as I do recall earlier, Section 83, subsection 4 of the Police Establishment Act of 2020 provides for or requires protesters to notify the police so that the police will collaborate with them and provide security, either for a public meeting, a rally, a protest, or a procession. But what the police have said this time around, we do not have adequate personnel to man processions and the rest of them. But whether it is in a place like Lagos, whether you can restrict protesters to only Ketu and Ojota, the same area, what happens to those who may want to protest in Epe, in Badagry, in VI, in Ikoyi, in Lekki and other places? So it is not fair to have only 2 designated areas in the outskirts of Lagos. It's not right. But that is what has been done this time around. And of course, the protesters are advised to try as much as possible to ensure that they do not engage in any form of violent protest. We also we are also calling on the police to ensure that protesters are not attacked, as was the case in 2012 and 2020, even when protesters were confined to certain locations.
Let's also look at the aspect of what some of the demands, or one of the demands from the police, saying that they want details, of the protesters, talking about their names and their contacts. Many have also questioned not just the legality, but also the intention. I'd like you to react to that.
Again, it's not a very serious matter. My colleague, Ebun-Olu Adegboruwa, SAN, had already written to the police on behalf of the protesters, and in the letter, he did indicate the areas they would like the police to cover for the purpose of the protest. There are other people in other parts of the country who I also believe must have made demands on the police with respect to where they would like to have their protests. So Nigerians are behaving very maturely as far as this protest is concerned.
But sir, do you think the same rule also applies? Yeah, do you think the same rule would also apply to people that are anti-protest protesting?
No, those who are opposed to the protest will have to stage their own protest later. You cannot have the protest, pro-government protests at the same time. That will lead to anarchy or chaos. And we have also pleaded with the police not to allow that. If there are people who want to oppose the protest or who want to protest on behalf of the government, they may have to be advised. The police should advise them to have their own protest if they want to say they are okay with hunger, they are okay with poverty. That will be their business. But efforts must be made not to allow a clash in line with the provisions of the law.
All right.
Because the law recognizes your right to protest for or against the government, but clashes must not be allowed.
All right. Now, let's also talk about, particularly when it comes to civil interaction by men in uniform, talking about the police and citizens, particularly on day of protest. Just a while ago, before we came, live on this program, News Central had its reporter just at Lagos Island, wanted to just, we have our reporters scattered all over. The reporter basically wanted to give a live state of affairs, around Lagos, and was accosted by men in uniform. For almost an hour, they went back and forth, and we captured it all live. This brings again the question of the level of, will I call it, sensitivity or sensitization by this men in uniform. Was anything around the interaction, particularly between men in uniform and citizens, was that discussed in that meeting?
Well, yeah, for sure. But what I'm going to advise is that, and we did request the Inspector General of Police to make the numbers, telephone numbers of his officers, DIGs, AIGs, and commissioners of police available to members of the public so that they can call them in case of any overzealousness on the part of members of the force, because it is the duty of the police to manage protests. It has nothing to do with the military. Again, I have a judgment in Femi Falana and Chief of Staff, Army, where the court decided that the army has no business with subjecting civilians to any type of search or harassment in town. If there should be any basis for a searching of people, that is the duty of the police. And happily this time around, the police the Inspector General of Police has taken charge, and we are therefore asking the military not to get involved, because we are no longer under a military dictatorship. Nigerians are matured, Nigerians are peaceful. It is only when there is provocation that violence may occur. And we are enjoining the police authorities to ensure that unarmed protesters, peaceful protesters, are not provoked or attacked, thereby, having violence, so that's the position.
All right, in 30 seconds before I let you go, sir, your advice, particularly for Nigerians who may want to be part of tomorrow's protest, from a legal standpoint, what should they look out for? What should they do?
My advice to the young people who have made up their minds to have this protest is to ensure that they conduct themselves peacefully. At the same time, we also call on the government that has recognized the right of Nigerians to protest peacefully, to ensure that their Nigerians who are protesting tomorrow or thereafter are not harassed or intimidated or attacked in any way. And those who are fanning the embers of hatred or tribalism will have to be called to order, because poverty knows no tribalism or religion or sectionalism. And so those who are also whipping up ethnic sentiments should be called to order, because you cannot go on dividing the poor while the rich are united in the exploitation, in the oppression of our people. So we're also asking the ordinary people not to be misled by agents of destabilization who are promoting ethnic disharmony
All right, sir. Thank you so much for your time on Politics HQ on News Central Television.